What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Day 2 of the convention is in the books. Though I'm actually recording this after coming off the show floor, so I don't know what trade night is going to bring yet, but I had a couple hour respite, so I figured I would record this to get it all ready to go for you guys and girls in the morning. So there may be a little update to this on the Day 3 video, depending on if anything happens at trade night tonight. Who knows what. Who knows? Tonight's the wide open night. Don't know where I'm going to end up, what I'm going to do, but we'll see what happens. But I'll probably end up at some sort of trade function somewhere at some point in time. But show floor today was pretty eventful. I made 2 pretty big deals. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll just kind of run through some recap stuff throughout the day. Same thing as yesterday. The internet was still very spotty. Dealers were still pretty tight. I had a little bit more dealer interaction today because anyone that's followed the channel for the last couple weeks knows that I had the Baker Flawless RPA. I had it sold. Guy bought, paid for it, shipped it off. I messed up the shipping, shipped it to the wrong address, and got the cards back. Completed the deal with the Soto on the other side, but the guy that originally bought the Baker Mayfield flaked on me and just completely ghosted me. So I brought that card with me in the anticipation of moving it. I either wanted to sell it or I wanted to trade it. So I shopped that around the show floor. Like I said, there was 2 comps. There was a recent $1,300 comp, which was my sale, which, I mean, technically sold. That card was paid for and shipped the whole 9 yards. Obviously, the guy flaked out at it after he returned it. And then there was a BG or a PSA 9 that sold for $800 and a raw that sold for $800 all around the same time. So I even though the $1,300 sale wasn't air quotes real, because I still ended up with the card back in. Technically, money changed hands there. I still felt pretty good about that comp based off of the PSA 9 doing $800. So I shopped it around. Most people just were like, no. And the best offer that I got on it was $800 cash. But outside of the $800 cash offer, there really wasn't much bites on it at all. But what I did get a vibe for is what dealers were buying. Because, you'd have to, usually most dealers are pretty busy, so you have to kind of stand there and wait for a couple minutes to actually talk to whoever's doing the buying for them. First off, the dealer tables that I went to were being pretty straight up. Like, before they would even ask to see the case, like if someone says, are you buying? They were like, listen, I'm paying 65 to 70%. If you're not willing to do that, we could just save a bunch of time. So some people were still willing to do that. They would turn their case around and the dealers would pick through it. So that's the first thing. Most dealer interactions that I had today were them buying at 65 to 70%. I would have been fine with that on the Baker, to be honest. That would have put it at, I would have liked to got $1,000 cash for it. That would have been slightly less than what I would have made on the eBay sale, but that's neither here nor there. The other thing that I noticed is they're being extremely picky on what they are buying. Unless you have something rare, unique, or something that's extremely liquid, like the big name quarterbacks, vintage, whatever, there's a ton of stuff they were passing on, which I think is pretty normal. But based off of what I heard from show attendees and dealers both, is that they were being very picky on what they were buying and only paying 65 to 70%. On the reverse side, looking to buy stuff, pricing was still pretty high on most stuff, though. 2 deals that I made were fairly priced. We'll talk about it. One was a pretty rare card, and then I'll talk about what I ended up doing with the Baker. So there's definitely still this push-pull of dealers being high-priced and buyers not buying unless it's a deal. Cash is moving. There's definitely transactions happening. Show was packed again today. Like, absolutely jam-packed. So attendance is great. You know what I mean? I had a ton of great interactions today with viewers of the channel and industry people and whatnot. But all that stuff's fantastic. I've had an absolutely fantastic time. But from a buying, selling perspective, the market is definitely still in a weird place with pricing. People are, still concerned about the general economy as a whole, and they are being very particular on what they are buying. On the flip side, the buyers, or the dealers rather, are being very particular on what they are buying as well, in addition to the customers. So that's the general vibes for the most part. Football continues to move pretty good. Predominantly PSA and BGS and SGC slabs good representation of SGC slabs on the show floor. I haven't really been able to get a vibe for like what's moving, what's not moving. Decent amount of the SGC rock hard things sitting in dealers' cases, mostly in dealers' cases. I've seen that. I know a lot of dealers that took advantage of that to try to get a little extra juice potentially on a rock hard that they had laying around, or to authenticate some vintage. I think on vintage is where it makes the most sense. If you have a card and it's in the SGC RCR label on a vintage card, it kind of alleviates some of the concerns for buyers. So I could definitely see the use case for that. But there's definitely a lot of those floating around as well. The PSA line is absolutely wild. It is insanely long. The Beckett line was also pretty hefty as well. CSG line was a little light, and then the SGC line was a little light as well, but they're not doing full grading, so it's a little more difficult there. I know a friend of mine got an RCR done. He dropped it off in the morning, and they had it ready for him by about 2 p.m., so that's pretty good turnaround time for $25. When that was like an older Brady card, I think, or something that he just wanted to get their opinion on it. So that stuff seems to be moving pretty good. I know there was issues with both Beckett and PSA because of the internet yesterday. On Thursday. There were some issues with the internet with PSA and BGS. I think it affected them both in regards to being able to pick cards up and then being able to get things entered. But the way I understand it is that they cranked it out and got everything done overnight once web services came back up. I think it was a combination effect of the internet and an AWS server went out regionally that caused a bunch of grief as well. So that's general show vibes. Let's kind of get into what I did on the show floor. Once again, I remain patient on day one, which is typically what I do. There was one deal on a Soto card that I passed on that I probably shouldn't have. And the first thing this morning, I went back to try to get it, and it had sold, which I had a feeling it was going to. So is what it is. It happens. But I like to play things a little tight on day one, unless it's something super rare. This wasn't a rare card, but it was a good price. So let's get back into the Baker. I couldn't sell it. I really didn't want to take the $800 cash offer that I had on the table for it, so I figured worst case scenario, I would just bring it home with me and gamble on him having a good beginning of the season, and maybe he gets hot and I could move off of it. So I basically given up. I had tried for almost probably an hour and a half, just walking around the different booths. I was just like walking the show floor, trying to move that card. Basically given up. And then I walked up to another table just randomly. And they had the card in the case that I kind of liked. It was around $1,600. And I just said, hey, I have this. Would you be open to something like trade plus cash for the card that he had? And it was the son and his dad, and the dad was not feeling it at all. But the kid threw out a number, and he said, I would want to. It basically he gave me $1,000 trade value on the card, which is very low for trade value, but I also know that Baker's not exactly liquid. It's like trying to move maple syrup in Canada in February to try to trade or sell this thing. But the card that I traded for, so I included the Baker and 600 cash and picked up a second Jim Brown SGC3. They had this stickered at $1,600. That's the same value that I traded for on the one I had gotten previously about a month or two ago. I think that number is like $100 too high, give or take. It's not terrible. I knew that number was good because I have an SGC3 already, so I was pretty familiar with the market. And he had two of these in the case. He had a 5.5, I think, or a 6 in a Beckett slab, and then he had this. So, the kid had blurted out that he would do the Baker and 600 cash for this, and in my mind, I knew that I was immediately going to take it because that seemed fair to me, given what I was moving, even if I was getting a little less trade value on it. But that's the game that you have to play when you're working with a dealer. It's either you don't do the deal or you take the card home. And in this case, I did not want to take that card home. I wanted to move it into something, and as obvious, vintage is about as safe as it possibly gets. So moving off that card and throwing in 600 cash for this felt like a no-brainer for me. Obviously, I lost a ton of money on that card. It's fine. It is what it is. I bought that at last year's National. I moved it at this year's National. We'll see what happens. But this, I now have two of these now, so it frees me up to potentially move one if I wanted to. This will be way easier to move than the Baker Mayfield will be, even if I had to add a little bit of cash to it. So I feel pretty great about that move. Moving a Baker for a Jim Brown, even including cash, was a no-brainer. It's a pretty nice copy. The front presents really well. Obviously, the corners and stuff look pretty good. It's definitely off-centered. The back's not in terrible shape. There is some surface issues on it. It looks like, I don't know if you'll be able to see this on camera or not. There's like some staining here. The lighting is terrible in this hotel. You can see some speckling there. Some brown spots there on the side. It looks almost like someone spilled something on it. When you have the card in hand and you kind of hold it at an angle, you could see like textured marks on it. So I'm not sure what happened to it, but it presents very well. Like if just sitting on a desk, you would never know that was there. You really got to look at it to see that. But it presents pretty well. I'll have to compare it next to my other one. I don't have it with me to see how that one looks. So I went from having no Jim Browns to now I have 2 Jim Browns. So that was the first pickup of the day. Let's kind of lean that back there. I don't know if that'll stay or not. Put that there to hold it up. The second pickup was a card that I had seen earlier in the morning. It was not a card. I mean, I guess you could technically expect to see any card at the National, but when I saw it and I checked the price, I thought it seemed really high with what they were looking to move it for. So I walked away. I checked prices on it. I looked it up to see where it had moved because one had not sold for a while. This is a very low pop card. I think in a PSA 10 and 9 combined, it's pop 50. I didn't check the BGS pop, but it's pretty low as well. And there was an actually very recent comp from PWCC auction from like 2 weeks ago, and this sticker was way over that price. And these are, I forget the name of the dealer, but I think I did a deal with them at last year's National. And they were very easy to work with. If it's the same guys I'm thinking of, once again, I don't remember the name. I'll try to look at the booth tomorrow to see if I could find it, because I really did like working with them. So I asked to see it, I looked at it, and I had the comp pulled up already on Alt. And because it was a PWCC listing, and I said, hey, can I see that? I want to check out the subgrades because it was a BGS thing. And I said, hey, like, do you have room on this? I said, like, one sold 2 weeks ago for the one that sold 2 weeks ago was for $1,500 on a PWCC weekly. And the guy said, can I see the comp? He's like, I got to check with my partner before, I make that big of a swing on it. So that sale was $1,475 on PWCC. And he came back and said, he's like, the best we could do is $15 even cash. And I thought about it for a minute, and I had already made up my mind that I was going to be fine with that number. I don't mind paying full comps on a rare card or a card that does not come to market very often. And this is definitely one of those cards. These do not pop up a ton, and it is an ultra-modern parallel, but it's one that I've always wanted. Anyone that's followed the channel for a while will know this card. This is the Luka. Once again, the lighting in here is not going to do this card justice, so we'll have to show this off better when we get home. Luka Mosaic Blue color match. They had a sticker for $2,500. Like I said, there was a PWCC weekly auction for $1,475, so they offered it to me at $1,500 cash. And I thought that was a pretty fair number for a card that does not pop up very often. The last PSA 10 comp on this card was like March at just under $3K. The last PSA 9 was even earlier than that. These just never come to market too often. And I love the pre-2019 Mosaic stuff, and I'm a sucker for a good color match. I now have the Trae Young Red in a PSA 10, and I now have this in a BGS 9.5, the Luka Blue. So I have the two 2018 rookie color matches. I haven't looked it over super close. I don't know that I would risk cracking this out for the PSA 10. It has a 9 on corners, but I have not had a chance to really look at the corners to see if it's glaring or not, where I think it would keep it from a 9. But it's 9.5 on everything else. So, but absolutely fantastic card. Once again, this setup is not going to do this card justice because I just don't have the lighting for it here. But I'll throw a picture up on IG, and then we'll do a full recap video when I end up getting back home next week. So those are the two deals that I made. Not sure what the plan is for tomorrow. On Saturday, it'll probably depend on what happens, or today, I guess, when you're watching this. It'll probably depend on what ends up happening Friday night at trade night. So tomorrow's video will probably be me recapping whatever happens at trade night tonight, if I can find a trade night tonight, and then whatever happens on the show floor on Saturday. So I'm going to continue to be very picky. Saturday is probably going to be tough for deals, just because dealers are going to be even tighter, and the show is probably going to be absolutely packed. So that's all I have for you guys and girls. If you have questions or comments about what's going on, throw them in the comments down below. I'll get to them when I can. I'm way behind on comments because the internet's so bad here. So we'll try to play catch up. And Maybe I'll do a live stream shortly after I get home early next week or something, and just do like rapid fire Q&A in addition to a wrap up video. So that's all I have for you guys and girls. Catch you on the next one. Peace.